But now we are going to move on to our last presentation about these projects, and I'm going to turn it over to Debbie Langenfeld, who I've already introduced, and Jane Brady. Quick introduction for Jane. She has been a steward since 2015, and she engages with us in a number of our different citizen science projects. She is always eager to jump in to do whatever is needed to make our project successful, and that includes becoming co-chair of our restoration projects. And so that is what they're going to talk to you about now.
All right, can you see it? I had a little technical difficulty there. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So thank you, Tiffany, for that introduction. And as she said, Jane and I are the citizen science leads for the restoration project, and we work with Helen, Tiffany, and Mary Ann, and Nita and Taminka, our research partner from NAU, on several restoration projects. I am having just a little difficulty. Hang on. I'm trying to get rid of something on the top of my screen that I can't figure out right now. There we go. Well, Dan and Mary have shown how to find sites that have been damaged. Now let's see if we can help them make an informed decision on how to restore them. Ecological restoration is about helping damaged areas recover to a natural state while improving ecosystem functioning and resilience. Success is largely dependent on the ability to grow native plants, but knowing how to grow them in a controlled environment such as a greenhouse is one thing. Growing them in a natural setting, such as the arid Southwest, is quite a different thing. That's why the word assisting is so important in the definition. To better understand what assisting means, let's take a look at this restoration treatment continuum, starting from passive types of assistance on the left to more active on the right. Habitat modifications include allowing natural recovery, restricting access by putting up signs and fences, adding materials such as dead branches or con mods to act as nursery plants, and modifying the soil by ripping, adding mulch, or digging pits to help moisture retention. Biotic material introduction includes adding topsoil that contains native seeds, spreading seed mixes, introducing Biocrust for structure and moisture retention, and transplanting native plants from surrounding areas. So now that we have a good idea what assisting means, let's take a look at 3 of the restoration projects we've completed and 2 in progress to evaluate how applying these treatments work. First, let's see what we can learn from a past restoration effort done in 2011 and 2012. As Mary and Dan discussed, the preserve was not always a preserve. For example, there were roads and parking lots in the Tom Thumb area that needed to be restored so they wouldn't continue to be used when the preserve opened. The city and the Conservancy used common practices to close and restore these areas. They ripped the soil, added vegetative litter such as dead branches and cactus skeletons, distributed seeds, and planted various kinds of cactus. 7 to 8 years later, we decided to capitalize on their restoration efforts by following up with a test to see how well they did. We found the efforts had mixed success. You can see from the picture that some restoration is occurring, but the plant communities adjacent to the old road have much more vegetation. Seeding was relatively unsuccessful, and while planting cactus did seem to contribute to overall plant cover, it did not appear to aid in the establishment of new plants. The research suggests that to be effective, there might need to be multiple additional treatments of seeding and addition of more litter to help protect the seeds. Now let's take a look at the closed trail restoration project in the northernmost part of the preserve. The city was in the midst of decommissioning some trails, and their common practice was to mechanically rip them with heavy equipment, cover them with vegetative litter, and leave them alone to recover naturally. We implemented this project to better compare their common practice with some alternative treatment. Thus began a 4-year study to determine best practices for compacted areas. 3 treatment techniques were used. We ripped the soil for better water retention using a weasel, salvaged topsoil containing seed banks from under nearby trees, and added seed mixes that Dan alluded to that mirrored the natural vegetation of the surrounding landscape. The results of the study were a little surprising. The big excitement is that the use of local seed bank soil was effective and shows promise as a cheap but relatively labor-intensive method. I could attest to that. By the end of 4 years, all plots, including those that didn't receive any treatment, resembled the surrounding natural area. So that tells us that limiting access is one of the most important considerations in restoration efforts. Fewer than half of the cedar species established and persisted over time. And looking at the graph, we can see that in the first 3 years, native and non-native cover were both higher in the RIP plot. But as conditions changed in 2020, and we've heard that a lot today, and it was a bit drier, unripped was the better treatment for establishing native plants. So in the long run, the unripped won. So these are the 2 projects that we completed. And as John said, the manuscript for past restoration has been published in American Midland Naturalist, and the one for Old Trails submitted to Restoration Ecology. We're teaming with the U.S. Geological Survey on the RestoreNet project. As you can see from the map, they're testing restoration treatments in all North American deserts across a broad range of landscape, soil, climate conditions, and disturbances. The blue circle shows the location of our research sites. We started field tests in 2019. Our 4 sites include an area on the Preserve at Granite Mountain called the Den, where rock climbers used to hang out and party, an area damaged by ATVs and campers at Lake Pleasant, an old farm field at Scottsville Community College, and a burned area in Tonto National Forest. There are 4 distinct treatments being used at each site: mulch, wire mesh connectivity monitors, aka pond mods, installed perpendicular to the soil, below ground pits, and warm and cool seed mixes to see which might do better as the environment changes. Since we just started our field tests in 2019, it's too early to show publishable results. However, we can say that we're starting to see the cool seed mix plants, lupin, desert marigold, and chia, in the pits doing well. Looking at the visual comparison between spring of 2020 and 2021, I think Paul showed kind of a similar comparison. At Tonto National Forest, it's clear that we saw more growth in 2020 than in 2021, probably due to the effects of the current drought. And one of the treatments on the continuum that has been often overlooked is Biocrust. Our research partner, Anita Antoninka from Northern Arizona University, is on a mission to change that. Here she is introducing the project.
Hi, I'm Anita Antoninka. I'm a research professor at the School of Forestry at Northern Arizona University. My particular research interest is using biocrust in restoration to restore degraded drylands. It's been my pleasure to have an opportunity to work with the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy to do this groundbreaking research with such an incredible citizen science team.
So what is Biocrust? Well, Biocrust in the Southwest is the community of 3 organisms: lichens, cyanobacteria, and mosses. It's vital to arid environments because of its incredible benefits. The most important is erosion control. It holds the soil together. Others include nutrition recycling, moisture retention, and an often overlooked one is that it breathes in carbon dioxide and breathes out oxygen. Because of human-driven activities such as urbanization and farming, it is disappearing rapidly. If Anita had her way, we'd roll Biocrust out across the earth like a carpet. So the goal of this project is to determine the best methods to cultivate Biocrust for use in restoration. Because Biocrust can take decades to grow, and because we can't just go out and buy some like we can with seeds, we had to develop a way to grow it quickly to use in rehabilitation efforts. We salvaged the Biocrust from the preserve before new trailheads were constructed. It was then sieved for homogeneity and grown in several controlled environments, including greenhouse hoop house and covered with shade cloth. Several innovative treatments were then applied to the resulting inoculum for the field research. For example, it was mixed with psyllium to help bind it to the soil, grown on jute, and made into pellets with diatomaceous earth. We installed 222 research plots in the preserve at Granite Mountain and are now in the second year of data collection. So let's take a look at some of the results. As you can see from the graph, all treatments have good field establishment and did better than the control. Psyllium worked well to help the crust bind to the soil. The crust grown on the jute prevented non-native plants, such as red rome, from growing. And we found that we are able to store the crust for later use without degradation, which is good because we have 50 plus 5-gallon buckets of them and several projects that would like to use it. We're proud that this was the first successful reintroduction of mature Biocrust in the Sonoran Desert. So we've reviewed the results of 4 of our restoration projects. What can we tell Dan and Mary to help them determine the best treatments to use to restore the damaged areas they identified? We've shown there are various things to consider when making restoration decisions and how complex it can be. Restricting access will work for recovery over time. Soil modifications do help plants establish, but with the caveat that they help non-native plants establish too. Seed banks are low-cost alternatives. Seeding had limited success, and Biocrust can be grown quickly and used in restoration efforts. Looking to the future, we're well positioned to continue to contribute to the existing body of knowledge concerning best practice management plans for degraded and damaged land. The research has paved the way for those working on future projects where Biocrust might be used to improve environmental and human health. And we have loads of storage left, preserved storage left that can be used. I want to acknowledge all our partners in citizen science who helped make this research possible and who helped with the salvage of the Biocrust. And I also want to especially acknowledge my co-lead, Jane Brady, who's been terrific to work with. So are there any questions?
Thanks so much, Debbie. That was great. And we just got a question that came in. It says, what is locally provided seed bank and where do I get it?
Locally provided seed bank is seeds that exist kind of in the soil. And so, as I mentioned, a seed bank, the soil contains seeds. And so in that case, we dug it up from under some trees that we had. So you can't go out and purchase it. You have to dig it up and find it somewhere and dig it up. It's in the soil.
I have a question. It's Patty. How long does it take for the Biocrust to develop and or grow?
So, well, 10 to decades. It can take decades, but 10 to 50 years is a long time. So that's why you see, you know, when you go to southern Utah, you see "don't bust the crust" signs and stuff, because it takes so long for it to recover.